Kate piece. Yeah. And one of my, I won't say resolutions, but one of my things for this year was I was going to do more documentaries than like fiction,
right?
Like watching TV, because I do consume a bit of TV in the evening when I'm done for the day.
Relaxing. Yeah.
So Harry and Kate, have you seen it yet? They're on my list.
Harry and Meghan. Oh,
Harry and Meghan. Sorry.
Yeah. William and Kate.
Harry and not Kate.
Harry and Kate would be really interesting.
Oh, no. Let's just get it started.
You heard it here first. Yeah,
Yes.
Completely unfounded.
That's the cool words.
Oh my gosh, have you seen it yet though?
I have seen some of it. Yes, I have. I have to admit, I have seen some of it. It's a bit disturbing parts of it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because it's somebody in distress, and who's taking advantage of the situation. Where exactly? Where are there layers of the people who are taking advantage of the situation? But you do sit and watch it when it's in front of you. So
yeah,
they are human beings at base, but it is hard to get to a level of empathy that you might have for a no-name person undergoing similar circumstances when you consider the elevated places they've been.
Yes.
So it's really, and I think it's a self-observation of the fact that there are humans at every level, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, what I have watched is 3 episodes of Kaleidoscope, and that flies in the face of my documentary, not resolution, but my documentary approach for the year. But that is a really different way. If you haven't kept up with that, so Netflix has some new show where we're so off track. I'll bring it back, I promise. Netflix it has this new show where I think there are 8 or 9 episodes. They're not numbered. They're named different colors. And Netflix is giving to you those on your service in a different order than everybody else gets.
Really, it's unique to you.
That's right. Well, as unique as 8 or 9 episodes could be, right, around the world. But they give them to you in different. I love Jerry just took a call during our podcast. So
he's very relaxed. And he's on mute.
You watch it in whatever order you want, but it has to end with the same episode, and it's really out of order. And it's kind of turned its head. It's turned watching a series kind of on its head because they're different snapshots.
Everybody's such a. I like that, and I guess the whole kaleidoscope thing makes sense.
I would argue that Pulp Fiction is the birth of the out of order viewing experience that your brain still ties together at the end.
I'll buy that.
Yeah, I think there is a release out there somewhere that you can watch Pulp Fiction in chronological order, all the scenes. You can watch them in chronological order, which changes the story completely, I guess.
I haven't seen that for a very long time.
Yeah, but it does raise an interesting approach of people doing things differently. Things we're used to doing. We're watching shows in order. We're mixing it up and we're doing things differently. And I guess, Moira, I told you I'd bring it back. We're going to talk a little bit about that today for referrals, right?
Very good. Yes, we are.
Oh man, you'd think I'd have 300 episodes under my belt.
Very good. Very slick.
All right, well, let's do it. You ready?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Welcome to the CXR channel, our premier podcast for talent acquisition and talent management. Listen in as the CXR community discusses a wide range of topics focused on attracting, engaging, and retaining the best talent. We're glad you're here.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the 355th episode of our Recruiting Community Podcast. I'm excited to be here with you today. I am Chris Hoyt, president of Career Crossroads. I am your host for the next 20 minutes or so, where we're just going to have a chat with an industry friend or colleague, somebody doing something kind of cool in the space, or who has an opinion that we actually think deserves more ears. And so if you're with us live, you can comment on the live chat. I think that live chat is featured on Facebook and on LinkedIn. But we're also on YouTube and Twitter in that live stream. If you happen to be with us and able to chat live, you want to drop something in there, you can ask a question of our guest today or of Jerry or myself. You can just comment and say hello. And if you feel so inclined, if you'd like to strengthen your network a little bit, go ahead and just drop your LinkedIn profile in there and see if anybody can connect with you. As a reminder, we are a membership-based organization, and this podcast really doesn't have anything to do with that side of the business, except the fact that we really like to chat with folks. Sit down and chat with folks about what's going on and what's top of mind for them. So this is not a revenue generating effort for us. This is most definitely something we're doing just to catch up and say hello and sort of spread the word. So I have a little bit of news I want to spread the word about today. I'm pretty excited about. I'm going to bring in Mr. Crispin to spread that word with me. Jerry, how are you?
Wow, cool. I'm going to sit back a little bit. So there we go.
We're in a 50-50 frame, but in a minute, don't worry. We're gonna share. So I want to share, I'm going to throw us off to the side here. We have a launch today. I'm just going to take about 2-3 minutes to outline it. We'll jump in with our guests today, but it would just kill me if I didn't share. Here you go. We have launched a learning platform, a little mini learning platform, if you will, within Career Crossroads. And it's at cxr.works/learning. This is the page that you'll get. You'll see we've got 5 courses. 4 are currently in development, and we just launched the new one. This week. It is free for everybody through the remainder of the month. So we're pretty excited about that. And I'm going to show you really quickly, if you go into one of these, the Foundations for Candidate Experience, which is the one that we have just launched. And Jerry, I want to ask you about that in a second. But I just want to show folks, it does consist of 4 different pillars of candidate experience: attraction, selection, closure, and execution. And each of those are delivered by a founder of the Candies, of the Talent Board, the Candidate Experience Awards, as well as the current president over at Talent Board, Kevin Grossman. So we have Elaine Orler, Ed Newman, Kevin Grossman, and of course, Jerry Crispin to talk about those. And when you are complete with that certificate, when you're complete with that, you'll actually get a certification that easily, with a click of a button, goes into your LinkedIn profile, and that can be shared with third-party organizations when you are looking to count up hours of work that you've done. And it's got a unique ID code on there that can be QR scanned and shared so that folks can validate that for you. So, Jerry, let me ask you really quickly your sort of takeaway. You are the godfather of talent acquisition and recruiting, and as we like to refer to you, and of course, one of the co-founders of the Talent Board and the Candidate Experience Awards. You had a segment in here. You want to take just a minute to share why this is kind of interesting and why folks should be taking a look at it, and then we'll jump right in with our guest.
Well, I think part of it is the folks that have been most active in the last 20 years around the issues of candidates, if you will, as a championing the candidate experience, if you will, is a critical component in how we should be doing our business in the 21st century. And fundamentally, this program is much more about what are some of the basics that people really should, the seatbelt issues, if you will, that we need to be dealing with candidate experience. And then hopefully enough references for where else people can go in order to begin to make a difference in their own practices and policies about how they treat candidates. But I do think it's a train that's coming at us more and more because the candidates themselves are gaining power as we speak and are becoming much more, critical, if you will, of the recruiting process that's more than a few years old.
All right. Well, I'd encourage everybody to check it out. cxr.works/learning. You can see those. Again, it is free for anybody who wants to take it by the end of through the end of the month. So you can get in, log in, register, take that on. It's a pretty quick process. It's about 1 hour in duration, and it's kind of fun. I went through it and I knew almost all the answers to the quizzes, but it went pretty well. It's pretty easy to do. So Jerry, thank you so much for being part of that and helping to stand that up. All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in from the green room. There she is. It's Moira from HireUP. Moira, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you doing today, Chris?
Good. I'm doing really well. Thank you for joining us. I want to point out it is HireUP with a lowercase p on the end, and I think the title might have been my fat fingers when I typed these in and set them up. So it's not HireUp, it's just HireUP. So what's wrong with that? So why don't, for those who may not know who you are, haven't had the pleasure of connecting with you, why don't you give us kind of an escalator pitch on who are you and why should we be listening to you today?
Sure. Thanks very much. And thank you for the platform. So who am I? I'm Moira Lynam. I am based in Dublin. Um, Although I have spent much of my career outside of Ireland, I have had a number of roles, global positions in the human resources space, in chief people officer roles in Asia, across Europe, and originally in Ireland. So my career has been all about developing my approach to leadership, understanding the importance of transformation in businesses, and quite frankly, just being agile, asking questions, being relevant, hunting out the problems in businesses with my colleagues, and then looking to identify solutions to address those in a meaningful way that adds to the bottom line discussion. And that's really what got me here, which is where I'm now currently the CEO of HireUP, which is a firm focused on revolutionizing referrals. We believe in as you just talked about the candidate experience, Jerry and Chris, we also believe the employee experience in referrals it's about time that we all got really serious about that and started to change the language and the relationship between employees, their networks, and employers, organizations. I talk to revolutionizing. There's a cultural revolution taking place inside organizations as culture is coming to the fore. And we have the opportunity to really advocate about culture from our CEOs, CFOs, CPOs, anybody with a C, and beyond that, in front of them, and advocate culture on the way out through your employee networks, but also advocate candidates on the way back in by using really simple tools to help you do that. And that's what we're doing.
So, Mark, let me ask you. I think it's really interesting work that you're doing, and I love to be the devil's advocate when we get on these to make for a fun conversation. But let me ask you, if you ask most employers what their employee referral talent pool looks like, right? What do those funnels look like? A lot of them are going to tell you the 20 to 30 percentile of traffic is referrals. So if I'm a big enough,
you're breaking up, by the way, Chris.
Oh, I am? Okay, well, I'll jump back in, but I'll ask this question.
Exactly.
Jerry,
so Maura, I will. So Maura, if you heard what he was saying, tell us a little bit about how you see this happening.
Yeah, so I believe where Chris was going, the pipeline is about 25% of the talent acquisition journey, and I agree. I call it the journey to 30. In fact, in that you have the opportunity to think about referrals as being part of a talent strategy, but most organizations don't actually know what percentage, or many organizations don't know what percentage of their strategy is dictated by employee referrals. So they're not tracking it in a meaningful way, but they're also not tracking the experience of referrals. And we live inside large platforms, which is very important, again, particularly for large organizations. And we get a little bit dictated by the KPIs and the platform's requirements. We need to stop and think about, well, what do we need to see from an employee referral? And what does the employee need to see? We've all experienced the black hole effect. I've got a CV. Here's the CV. Can somebody help me with this person who I think is really valuable? I know what this team needs today. I know what the problems are, and I've got the person to help us solve it. And it's crickets, because nobody knows where that candidate CV has gone to. And we've solved that problem. We track it for the employee, we track it for the employer, and we track it for the candidate. We give visibility of the job, we give visibility of the performance, the payout, the awards that you get for recommending somebody. And also you get the chance to advocate. You got to say, which I think is the most important aspect of revolutionizing referrals, is the chance not to be seen as part of a data scraping. I'll just send it out at will to my network, that I'm looking to put my voice and my credibility to that candidate, and you're bringing that back inside the organization. So I see growth from 8%. Sorry, I've probably answered very big there. So growth generally 8% to 30%. It's part of a wider talent strategy. It's part of a data pool. It's a lead indicator of information about the well-being, your culture, your employee engagement, and your connection with your employees by just looking at your employee referrals.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm such a fan of the fact that we have such an opportunity in the 21st century to look at the connectedness that we all have. And the difficulty, there's so many different challenge points within that framework. Everything from friends and family kinds of referrals that are a problem for many companies in relation to that, to ways in which that connectedness can enhance diversity as opposed to bias that we often attribute to that.
Yeah.
So if we're identifying the varying ways in which we have those connections to people who might work for us, and fundamentally we're able to measure that and understand the sentiment on both sides, we should be increasing our ability to do a better job in recruiting long term. And yes, it should be probably 30% or higher in almost every company.
Yeah.
You know.
So we know sorry, Chris, and then I'll hand it back. Two things.
No.
We know that B2B is 52% of referrals. So, business is done on a referral basis, on a B2B basis. Why aren't we thinking about that in the same way in the employee candidate experience? And the second thing, SHRM just recently released a report which shows employer referrals are the second source of hiring. So in the US, if this is the second source of hiring, why aren't we doing it well enough? Why aren't we taking the time to really be thoughtful about that experience, and think about the improving and being part of an ATS platform? As I'm thinking out, I'm thinking, gosh, now I'm going to have the ATSs coming in and and running modular programs. But it's a great opportunity for candidates and also for employees. The power of people, the power of connections.
Yeah, well,
Cool.
I was just going to call out, and I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to call out that originally, we do hear people say 30% of their, referrals are candidates. Am I having sound averages again?
Yeah, you're still at it.
Oh man,
you're still at it.
I might be out.
I'll so Moira, I would argue that that referrals, in fact, are first. It's just we're not measuring the extent to which that's happening. So, and I'll give you one great example is most sourcers. So we attribute a sourcer's effort to hiring. One of the basic techniques of any sourcer is to go to the hiring manager and the team and look at their LinkedIn connections and then ask for permission to connect to them, which becomes a referral in itself. Mm-hmm. But doesn't get attributed to the individual that made the statement. Yes, this is a person I know or should know, and you can call them on my behalf and talk to them. And what it creates is fascinating approaches. The other is so many coaches will tell an individual who's a candidate to go to the company and find an individual that they can connect to. And very often that doesn't get counted in the formal referral program. So, I mean, I'll shut up, but the reality is we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and we're going to need tools like HireUP in order to be able to be confident that we're making good use of it in ways that we intend to.
Yeah, I think that's great insight, and it's the tracking, it's understanding the data flow, what's happening inside your organization, but because we have to be much more thoughtful about what people want, the shift in the relationship that is taking place between employees and employers over the past 24 months or so. It's shifting again. Obviously, there's uncertainty around what's happening around us. But, I think as employees, we're looking for something different. We're looking for a different dialogue and a different relationship. And you do, in a connected network, you are much more able to help to support people to success, to performance. And the onboarding time is much faster. And you just don't want your network to fail, right? So your relationship is very different. But your point is really well made about just, how do we track that sourcing, and we need to be better at doing that.
Let's hear you, Chris.
All right, can you hear me? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Great.
Well, Jerry did call out my point. I had another side point. I'm noticing a trend of people saying SHRM instead of SHRM anymore, and I'm not going to get on board with that. I can't, because I like the word SHRMy. That feels a little SHRMy, and I can't say that feels a little SHRMy. So that's all the value I have to add to that actually part of the conversation.
That's very insightful.
It does seem to me, though, outside of the SHRMy stuff, it does seem kind of interesting to me that for so long the referral aspect was just enough to put a link out there. It was just enough to put, because I remember ages ago in another lifetime, there was a program with lots of payout for employee referrals, big payouts. And at the organization I was at, the CEO said he was done doing payouts for referrals. He was done. You ought to be proud to work here. You ought to want to refer people. You shouldn't have to be incentivized. And I remember my recruiting team was terrified at the time because it was 30% of the candidate flow that came in, right, for them to sort of pick from, right? And when he turned it off, there was no change to the candidate flow, like none. And so for a while, I think we saw a lot of people pulling the investment out of that, right, from a reward standpoint. But I think here we are again. We're now seeing organizations figuring out sometimes innovative ways to incentivize that referral process. And I think to Jerry's point earlier, before I had to do a quick reboot, and the impact that does or does not actually have on diversity and the worries of DE&I from a referral program.
Yeah, so we have to, referral piece is about behaviors. And so sustained behaviors will obviously keep it going. And again, through COVID, with some of our organizations, we saw them switching off. And, obviously everybody went on hold. And the minute it came back on, the behaviors just switched back on. And again, I kind of push that back to that. It's a lead indicator of how people are feeling about working around here. And that's a positive. The question around should you share by rewarding employees, there's some thoughtful discussion that needs to take place around the price of the tag that's attached to the payment to balance the behavior. So you don't set up individual recruiting desks. But to that diversity piece, what we have seen is quiet networks. And so those networks where people don't automatically manage their way through the potential bias that exists inside the pre-selection processes, it's a great opportunity to navigate and manage that in an appropriate way, because the organization still makes the decisions, but you can surface quiet networks in a very different way by having platforms that are working, or referral policies that are thoughtful about the promotion, how they're getting those jobs out to the network. Have they put together a diverse network to send the job out to, or does it all look the same? And is there challenge taking place inside the TA teams to do this just a little bit differently and a little bit better?
I think a lot of it has to do with our willingness to be much more transparent about the data we're collecting and sharing that back into the system.
Yeah.
So, if they've got a bunch of experienced managers, if you will, who only refer people as old or older than themselves, that could be a problem. But, some of those leaders should know young people.
Mm.
They should know people who aren't the same gender. They should know people who aren't the same color. So the reality is we should be sharing the kind of data that allows us to see whether we're building a diverse referral network that reflects us as a society and reflects our performance going forward. So I'm convinced that more transparency is needed. And I'm a fan of a different kind of incentive where, in effect, you might get some points, and then somewhere you pull out a great opportunity for someone, but that random approach doesn't mean that everybody's getting a few dollars or a lot of dollars. It means that someone gets a prize somewhere in all of this, and I think that that's as good an incentive as you need.
Absolutely, and we've built competitions. Just from a HireUP perspective, we have built a competitions capability inside the platform. But part of that, when we talk to employees, we say it could be cash, but it could be a phone, it could be a charity, it could be something. Think differently.
We've seen a lottery drawing last year, I think, for a car. One of our member companies did that for folks who referred people to come in, and every referral was an entry into a drawing.
Yeah, but understand the behaviors you're trying to. What are you trying to drive? And then when you're using all of your tools, are you consistent in the messaging and use of those tools to ensure that you've got that coalescence around
the behavior that I would want to incentivize for each and every person is visibly telling people who have referred folks who have come in and been successful that that's the kind of behavior I'm looking for in our community of employees, of sharing with us and with your friends and colleagues and peers that this is a great place to work, because that's what we're striving for. And if you are referring people that come to work and help us move forward as a company, I should be patting you on the back, telling other people about you, and promoting the hell out of you, because that's the behavior I want from leaders.
Yeah.
Moira, would you say that? And I hate to get too granular, but would you say that if from the programs that you've seen put out there, is it incentives, or is it recognition that you have seen in your experience sort of have referral programs performing better? Like I'm climbing the ladders because I have referred for points or whatever type of recognition, that I have referred more hires than anybody else that are successful? Or is it lottery drawing, cash payouts, that sort of thing? Like where's the sweet spot that you've seen?
It's really driven by the culture of the company, right? And that's where that cultural piece has to be really understood and thought about. You in a high turnover organization, the question we ask is, well, why are you paying it 6 months in when potentially those people aren't there anymore? So you're running a referral program that they can't access. So think about that. In different type of organizations where you've got high profiled, highly skilled knowledge based workers, there is a combination between the competitions and the cash, because we all know, right, in the world that we live in, people are motivated at various stages by very, very different things. And so it is about taking time out to consider the population that you're targeting. What have they got that you're either topping up, or have we an opportunity to do something different? So I guess it's not a one size fits all. It's about being working through what's happening uniquely in your organization and the value sets that you're trying to deliver to that wider organization.
I think that's a great call out. Varies by function, could vary by culture, right? And the different types of jobs, that are being rolled out.
That culture issue is a key issue, I think, because I don't believe that referrals are viewed the same way in India, China, and other countries as we view here. And I think in the US, we're much more able to differentiate between our family, our friends, and our peers and colleagues who could be doing a better job. Whereas in other countries, in some instances, my face is the perception of myself as an individual changes if, in fact, I refer somebody and you don't hire them. Then I lose face in light of all of that. And so fundamentally, in some areas, that's a problem we have to overcome. And in other countries, I really have to refer all of my cousins, my family, and everyone else before I refer anyone.
Yeah.
So because they all need a job.
Yeah. And yes, to that point, but emerging markets are emerging markets, and and there's evolution in those markets, and the conditions have changed. 15 years in emerging markets, and the conditions have changed, and that face versus family, they exist, absolutely, but the emerging markets are always looking for opportunity. And it's about how you tell that opportunity, and you're still building culture, you're still building norms inside organizations and behaviors, and you can still manage to navigate through that.
Yeah. And I like what Cynthia commented on, that an innovator referral program can help with a great retention.
Absolutely.
And clearly, as long as performance is equal to or better than the average, that works. Otherwise, I don't want to be retaining those folks who aren't performing.
Right. My other, thought process to that point about performance, because we generally tie payment to the performance of the candidate who we have made the decision about as being acceptable to our organization, but we're holding back payment for probationary periods of performance, etc. You've got to also question, why are we doing that? Why are we tying those two ends together? Is there opportunity to make some shifts, pay some of it up front to recognize or to access, again, because it's about trust, transparency, and this is the behavior that we want. So we have to make some shifts too.
And Moira, let me ask you: are you seeing a difference in? I know historically, there's always been a back and forth about where the payment comes from, right? Who funds the award, or who funds sort of the payout, whether it's the business unit or it's the organization as a whole, or whether it comes out of a TA budget. Are you seeing any trends one way or the other, or is it just still kind of all over the place, depending on how organizations are built out?
It's basically how organizations are built out. So whichever revenue stream you're dealing with the business unit that you're dealing with will make the call on where the payment is. But I like the point I think that you're making around talent is not business unit owned. It sits, it's the ownership of the wider organization. And why don't we think about it in those terms? So I don't disagree on that point.
Yeah, it's an easy thing to say until people start putting money down. When you start looking at
I'm more concerned about the baseline practices for how we treat both the person who's been referred as well as we refer the person as the person who did the referral.
Right.
I want the person who did the referral to have some knowledge of the status of what happened.
Well, you do the same as a regular candidate, right, Jerry? Like the referral doesn't get extra treatment, right?
Well, if the person who's referred, doesn't get the time of day, doesn't get any closure, isn't told that we're no longer interested in them, everybody's embarrassed, including the person who did the referral, who's not going to be doing that anymore. Yeah. So we obviously have to tie to the systems and technologies that allow us to track this, measure it, etc. We need to be able to track the sentiment around some of those baselines so that we know when we're going astray, if you will, or that we're doing things that enhance everyone wanting to do even more of those referrals. Yeah. And that, I think, is really where the power of moving it from 8% to 30% is going to come from.
It's the transparency, it's the trust, it's the belief. We're all proving to each other that it's working. We're generating quality candidates. They're being landed in the organization. I've line of sight of what's going on, and so we are huge advocates of transparency. at all stages for that purpose, because again, that company advocacy is what you're looking for from your employees by sharing their networks.
Yeah, I would argue that the treatment of a referral should be the exact same as the treatment of who's not a referral. The technology today says we can do that. For whatever reason we choose not to, or we limit on, manpower, horsepower, whatever you want to call it. But I would give in on the fact that your referrals could tank twice as fast, if not exponentially, more quickly, if you're not paying attention to those referrals. You could kill that program lickety split.
Yeah.
But I think that that level of transparency is actually deserved by all the candidates.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that is different, Chris, is the fact that there's a referrer involved, and communication with that referrer back and forth is not going to be an element in a non-referred, situation. But yeah, I agree. We should learn from the referrals doing that really well and correctly. A lot about candidate experience that we should be transferring some of those practices to the non-referred group as well.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Well, Moira, let me. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So I was just going to draw Jerry's point out about the referrer. And let's be really clear: the referrer is your employee, and you are sending messages about the relationship. If you're not managing that in the best way that you possibly can to provide that level of transparency to everybody involved.
Yeah.
And that you don't want that employee referrer to be the ex-employee because of that lack of engagement.
All right, I've got two questions left for you. The first one: who's doing it really, really well? Who would you out as an organization that's doing the referral process and follow the whole kit and caboodle? Who's doing it really well?
That's really unfair. Question for somebody like me. Those organizations, gosh, because it's so multifaceted, right? Because it depends by which measure. So if it's by which measure of recognition, your traditional advisory financial services firms are doing it well, but those people who are focused on culture, who understand the importance of culture, and are looking to lean into that and really build that out with the employee relationships, those are the organizations that are doing it well. And agile organizations, the ones who can make the decisions quickly, who are able to cut through it, see it very well, and are willing to trust. So I ain't calling anybody out.
You can pick any aspect of the process. You can't get
I don't blame her.
It's worth a try. Absolutely worth a try.
We used to, Kirk Crossroads used to take every year data from our members about source of hire. And there was many, I used it as a lab because there was so many problems with how you measure source of hire that it was a little bit wonky always. And so I would be lab error is really what the report looked like. But we would out our members in terms of those that are between, I don't know, under 20 to 30 and above 30.
Yeah.
And we would attempt to bring them together to talk a little bit about the practices that they used at that level. And you could see distinct differences in terms of how people, were either too casual or they didn't have the kind of audit or measuring tools to be able to do that. And still, from the last time we've done this, not enough of our members are in fact using specialized tools. They, because they think they can do it without that, and fundamentally, that's a lot of extra labor and work. And the whole idea of technology tools is to cut through all of that and automate some of those things.
Absolutely.
And then focus in on what you should be doing. So
yeah. And what seen on that point is the inconsistency of the measurements.
Yeah.
And actually, do we actually know what they are? Do we really, have we got really good hold on some of those key metrics? And we all know each organization as well, have their own set of metrics around which they're measuring. But, part of what I'm hoping that we're doing is raising awareness to have the conversations, to start to think about it. Are there a consistent set of metrics that we should all commit to? And then you build your unique metrics from that. And I think that will be helpful so you don't have this lumpy data. You start to build consistency around data as well.
Yeah. Well, okay. So Moira, let me ask you, if you were going to write a book today around this topic, what would the title of that book be?
Because it's today, because we're in the world that we're in, I think I'd call it Quiet Revolution. We have a lot of discussion around hiring, around movement, internal mobility, and all this quiet hire, quiet hitting, quitting. These are cycles we've seen in the past, but to me, actually, Quiet Revolution in the referral space is that opportunity to create those opportunities for people in organizations, and then using your organization, your network in the organization, to help to meet those strategic requirements by having this quiet revolution around referrals, or quiet referral revolution, maybe. Because, if you've just laid off 12,000 people, as an example, there's still churn in your organization. You still need to recruit. You don't want to, from a market position, you don't want to be out in the market saying, we just laid off and now I'm recruiting. But you can use your referrals to help to build that quiet revolution inside the organization, build the behaviors, build the engagement with your employees, and take it from there. So quiet referral revolution.
There's a lot of quiet. There's quiet quitting. There's quiet firing, quiet hiring, quiet networks, quiet revolution. So there's a lot of quiet stuff. Next, maybe 24 is going to be the year of the loud stuff.
Loud, yeah. Bang it.
All right, well, thank you so much. We're so gracious. We're grateful for the time that you've given us today. You've been such a gracious host. We appreciate you dealing with our ramblings and some technical challenges. So very, very appreciative of that.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Great discussion.
You got it. Well, hang in there. I'm going to put you in the green room, and I'm just going to share some folks. Jerry, I'm going to put you in there with her too. How's that? Here we go. There you go. Puppet Master with all the slides. Let's see if I can do a really quick screen share. I'm going to pull this up and share with you. We've got a couple of events coming up. It's you can find this. Here we go. Perfect. cxr.work/events. This is what's going on for the rest of this month. If you're with us today on the 24th, obviously, we just wrapped up this podcast. We've got a DE&I community meeting that is just ahead for our members. So you can join that on the 25th. On the 26th, our next lecture series, Concentration and Hybrid Work, coming up on the 26th. That's for members as well. And then our next podcast guest, and that is coming up. Let me move that screen a little bit. On the 21st, we have friend Chris Havrilla, who's going to be joining us. We'll do that live streamed here as well. We get into February with our campus recruiting meeting. And then, of course, high volume recruiting taking us on after that. So I'll just pull that out and tell everybody we're super grateful that everybody was able to join us. cxr.work/event. And I want to remind you, cxr.work/learning. It's just launched this week. It's free through the end of the month. Check it out and have fun with that. And we'll see you next week on the show.
Thanks for listening to the CXR channel. Please subscribe to CXR on your favorite podcast resource and leave us a review while you're at it. Learn more about CXR at our website, cxr.works, facebook.com and twitter.com/careercrossroads, and on Instagram at careerxroads. We'll catch you next time.